So a good friend of the channel, Gyro, an Ohio State fan who's very active in my Discord server, link to that's below. It's totally free. I encourage you to join. He asked me a question in relationship to Michigan and Michigan being able to be a program that can only reload and never rebuild. That was the premise of his question. Michigan last year went 8-5, 5-4. They finished in the top half of the Big Ten after winning it all, and they did beat Ohio State and they beat Alabama, who were top 4 power-rated teams per FPI. It was a rebuilding year. No matter how you phrase it, because I've heard some Michigan fans say that the season was actually not a failure. It was a failure. Anyone who says that Michigan's season last year was not a failure is insane. It's insane. Either that or they don't view Michigan as a serious contender. They view Michigan as a has-been or someone who shouldn't be a blue blood. Or they view Michigan as a team that's lucky to be a top 25 program, which again, circle back to it, that's nuts. That's insane. A team that should only be lucky to be top 25 does not have the history they do, does not have the most wins in college football history. They do not have a top 5 win percentage in college football history. And they don't have the ability at the same time as those things to get a donor to pay a generational quarterback $2 million at a high school. It doesn't happen. They also don't recruit. They also, a team is just lucky to be top 25 doesn't recruit at a top 15, top 20 level every year at the very worst, and then has the potential to recruit at the top 5. Again, insanity. Last season, by any reasonable standard for Michigan, was an absolute failure. The only thing that prevented Michigan from getting a F grade and instead gave them a D grade was the Ohio State game. And then to a certain degree, the Alabama game, because most of Alabama's players played, a lot of Michigan's didn't, so Michigan's backups were able to overcome Alabama starters, and that was good. But also, Alabama at the end of the year was nowhere close to what they were at the beginning of the year. It was Alabama's worst team in terms of overall level of play since 2007 with Nick Saban. It, in truth, was that bad. There were moments where the team, I think, showed flashes of having a higher ceiling than the 2023 team showed, but you didn't have Saban's coaching. You didn't have the same floor consequentially because of the lack of discipline. Anyway, I just don't think that win was program defining. If there was any win last year that was program defining, I think that it would have been the Ohio State game. And even then, Ohio State did some things to help themselves lose in that game. To be fair, Michigan did things to help themselves win too. They did a better job covering Ohio State wide receivers than most did. They did it in an intelligent way too. If they couldn't cover Jeremiah Smith, they just ripped him down. That takes intelligence right there, and that's good coaching. Offensively, in that game, they were able to, a lot of the time because they were able to wear down Ohio State's defense due to Ohio State's offense punting all the time or turning it over, but they were able to push Ohio State's D-line more than anyone else that I saw all season long outside of Oregon's offensive line. So I think that shows something to Michigan program-wise under the current regime. I think that under Sharon Moore, for Michigan to be a program that only reloads, they have to recruit at minimum top 10. And before I tell you the other thing, please subscribe, like the video, hit the notification bell. Also hit the notification bell on the Michigan podcast that I do. My Michigan podcast is just a collection of Michigan videos on my YouTube channel. So that way, if you're only interested in Michigan football, you can just follow when I talk about Michigan football. So do that. It's free. The link to that's in the description. You'll see it pop up, desktop or phone, whatever you use, you'll see it. The other thing is the staff. The staff has to be better than it was last year. Now it will be because Lindsey's a big upgrade over Kurt Campbell. Lindsey's had multiple OC jobs, never really been fired, at least from what I can remember, has had success wherever he goes, at least at an average level. Kurt Campbell has always underperformed expectations wherever he's been. I think that Michigan has to recruit top 10 at bare minimum, and they have to have an elite staff. And the worse the staff is, the higher the recruiting has to be. If the staff can't be elite every year, if it can't be top 5 or not top 10, top 5. If the staff isn't going to be close to what I would call a 5 grade, where almost all your coaches are A-level, top 10 in their respective areas coaches. You can have one exception. It happens with everyone. Michigan, for example, I think the exception to that in 23 was Ron Bellamy. I think he was the worst position coach on the team, quite frankly. And still he was okay. Wasn't bad, but wasn't good either. And everyone else, I think, was at least great or elite. When I think about the tandem of coaching, recruiting, and development, Michigan has to be a lead at strength and conditioning. They have to have great coordinators, great position coaches. They all have to be involved in recruiting. And if they're not a top 5 staff, then you probably have to recruit at a top 5 level and not just a top 10 level. Or maybe now, because the top recruiting classes are not as good as they used to be, because there is more competition, and with the transfer portal players and NIL, players want to get more playing time and leverage that. So you're not going to see a 2021 Alabama or 2021 Ohio State recruiting class as often as you used to. You're not going to see one program, unless it's probably Texas, dominate the number 1 class every year. And that's just because Texas is talent rich and they have one of the largest, if not the largest, budgets to pay players. So that's an exception to the rule. Those are what I think Michigan needs to constantly reload. I mean, Harbaugh, for example, he wasn't able to consistently reload and not rebuild, because constantly reloading means you do what Ryan Day has done. You do what Nick Saban did. That was more than just reloading, though. That was you reload and then you're able to still fire at the same clip rate on average. Day reloaded and won his first natty in 6 years, which is still extremely impressive. I'm just saying that counts as reloading too. If you're defining reloading as only doing what Saban did, then that's impossible. Michigan is not going to ever do that. Because I wouldn't pick Alabama to ever do that again either. I need to see someone be Nick Saban before I pick them to be Nick Saban. It just has to happen that way. So that's my opinion. If Michigan wants to be a program that only reloads, they got to recruit top 10 every year at the bare minimum. Maybe you can occasionally get away with falling outside the top 10 as long as you make up for it in the portal or you recruit a large class and you're elite developmentally. But it's just easier to recruit top 10 or top 5, especially with the money and resources Michigan has, and make sure you have a great elite staff. Like, choose one of the things to focus on, but make sure you don't miss the other one either. Michigan last year, they recruited really, really well. And they have, I think, better NIL and even maybe better recruiters than they did under Harbaugh. But my gosh, the development was just not there. It wasn't. And the in-game coaching wasn't either. And if you don't fix that, you're going to lose the top recruits. You just will. So Moore needs to improve. The Chip Lindsey hire needs to pan out. Martindale needs to improve. And he did toward the end of last year. So I'm not going to be as hard on him, even though at one point I wanted him gone. And then the assistant coaches have to keep getting better, and many of them are young, so there's room for them to improve. And recruiting has to be a priority, and thankfully it is. I mean, there is a world, yes, a world where Michigan is a program that almost always only reloads. But it's not right now. I think that last year was a rebuilding year. I think this year could be a breakthrough year, but not in the national title way. In a way similar to Oregon last year, where you win the Big Ten, win a bunch of games, and then in the playoff, you probably have some issues that'll get exposed. 9.5, 9.9 times out of 10, at the very least. That's my thoughts on Michigan and whether they can become a program that only reloads or how they can do it. Thank you, Gyro, for asking that question. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Top 10, top 5 classes. And something that Michigan is doing right now that's really good is they're getting top 100 quarterbacks, or at least from what Brady Smigiel is projected to be by 24/7 Sports Composite, they're going to get back-to-back top 100 players at the quarterback position. And by that I mean overall. Smigiel's the 8th best quarterback per composite, and Underwood was the number 1. If they can recruit really well at QB and then develop well there and continue their tradition on the O-line and defense, then absolutely they will become a program that 9 times out of 10 reloads instead of rebuilds.